that, I will call this meeting to order. Do we have any agenda revisions?
There is a revised page 2 that's inside everyone's agenda that just added the resolution as an action item as well.
Okay.
So that's the only change.
Perfect.
And it's been posted on the website and we're good.
Any audience participation? Anybody online participating? Anybody in person? Okay. All right. Moving right along, we'll jump into our presentations. We have our board appreciation.
Yes, so, that one to the top, right. So we spend all year, taking advantage of your volunteer service, and we very much appreciate each person on our board contributing the way that you do. Each person has a special role and brings their gifts to the board. And so this appreciation for this January, we have asked each one of our staff to pick a board member and to give a personalized appreciation to you regarding some of the things that you do that are just unique to you. And I have to tell you that Shelley has thought long and hard, and she has a appreciation for you over here on the side, and kind of the whole idea is you are getting a board for the board.
For the board.
And they're cut above. It used to be a cutting board, so they're cut above. Right?
Cut above, yes.
Yeah.
And I just have a little short statement for each one of you, if you don't mind. Just thinking about you and have specifically put together an appreciation for each one. So I'll start with Matt, board chair. Matt, your calm leadership and thoughtful approach set a positive and collaborative tone in the board. Carlos, your experience as a longtime administrator in Oregon's educational system brings invaluable wisdom and perspective to the board. Mary, your deep knowledge of school district operations and your experience in policy and advocacy bring an invaluable perspective to our board. Anthony's not here, but I bet you can guess what his would have been about. Oh, he's online. Okay.
It's online.
Anthony, your expertise in accounting and finance provides stability and insight into some of the most complex parts of our work. So thank you for bringing your professional skills to your board role. Alex, your passion for equity and advocacy for families shines through in all of your work. As a father and community advocate, you bring a personal perspective that reminds us of the real life impact that we do, of the work we do. Thank you. Elizabeth, your leadership in equity and advocacy is a driving force behind the work we do. You remind us to center equity in every conversation. Emily, I think Emily's online.
Yeah.
Yes, Emily brings a perspective of both an educator and a parent, which is invaluable to the board. She has firsthand experience in the classroom, and it reminds us again of the real world impact of our decisions on teachers and students. So thank you, Emily. Anne-Marie, you bring a higher education lens that helps us think about the whole K-12 system and focus on lifelong learning and pathways for students after high school. Your thoughtful leadership reminds us that our work is part of a broader ecosystem of education. Thank you. Gwen, I think Gwen is online.
She's on there too. Yeah.
Gwen, your dedication to community service and advocacy for equity strengthens our board. You bring a unique perspective that reminds us to think about all of our students and family, especially those who are often marginalized. Thank you, Gwen. Together, this board brings experience, passion, and commitment to education, and you make HDESD stronger. On behalf of myself and the leadership team and the entire HDESD family, thank you for your service. Your leadership is appreciated and your impact is lasting.
I have to note here, my letter is from Lauren Lester. And Lauren and I actually met when she was representing the tribe of Warm Springs. And I was representing, I was the insurance agent for Jefferson County 509J School District. And we were talking about agreements and how to collaborate and how to work together. And she just mentioned about, it almost seems like we've kind of grown up together, like look at us as babies like back in the day. And I kind of forgot about that story, but yeah, I've known her for a very long time. It's just fun to have build those relationships within the organization that, you know, that will expand past this organization and into life and other areas too. So it's just great to see.
Our intention was just to really personalize our gratitude to you and acknowledge you as people, but also as volunteers for this whole region. So hopefully you'll enjoy the cards we prepared.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Matt, you were, when Sarah mentioned that to the exec team, Lauren was the first to grab Matt. She says, I've known Matt a long time, I wanna write his card, so you were first.
There was no reluctance for any board members.
No, there was not, there just was an extra enthusiasm from Lauren.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it made it fun for people
Yeah.
to acknowledge the board.
I could have talked about your Mr. RHS performance.
Oh boy.
Yeah, you want to talk
You've
about?
known me longer than Lauren, yes. We go way back.
Is there video?
That was probably, that predates video and.
Oh, it does not.
It's on VHS.
Is it somewhere? Your mom
My
probably has it.
kids have both seen it.
Have they?
They've seen their dad make a fool of
That's awesome.
And I do want you to know that your boards were handmade by a local artist, and so it just gives you a treasure from this region, and we liked how it represented another aspect of the community. So.
Thank you. Okay. Have you appreciated us enough?
Anybody else?
All right, moving on, we have our early intervention, early childhood special education presentation today.
Hello, our favorite
I
providers.
know, I was gonna say.
I'm excited to present about our programs. Jenny Faircloth, Executive Director, and I have two amazing colleagues here. I'll let you introduce yourselves. I'm Jenny Lewis, and I'm the Assistant Director of the program.
And I'm Julie Manning, and I supervise Madras, Warm Springs, and Redmond campuses.
So tonight we just want to focus on building a shared understanding of our programs, and I'll celebrate some of our strengths and also share with you some of the challenges that we're facing in serving our children and families. The State Interagency Coordinating Council is made up of parents and early learning leaders, and I'm pulling some of the data from the governor's report. And I like to just highlight the impact that we have as providers across the state, where over 14,000 students in birth-to-five special education are served in Oregon. And we have the yellow, which is Region 2. We have Crook, Deschutes, Jefferson County, the Confederated Tribe of Warm Springs, and then we have subcontracts with Kearney County, and then North Central, which consists of Sherman, Wheeler, and Gillian. So I have an overall picture of what our enrollment looks like over the past decade. And overall, there's about a 27% increase in our census over the past 10 years. And this this is for our region, which includes our subcontracts. So from December of 2014, we had 541 students served, and December 2024, we're at 691 students. And so this consistent growth really underscores the increasing demand for our services. Of Region 2, when we pull out our subcontracts, we actually serve 91% of our census is served in the Tri-County area, which includes Warm Springs. And for those of you who might not know, our funding is actually based on our December 1st count. We don't have an average daily weighted attendance like the school districts. We have a data grab on December 1. We don't have wait lists, and we take students year round, and so they determine December 1 is about our average, and they look at the last biennium of December 1 counts for our next biennium funding. So here's an overview of our team. Right now we are sitting at 115 team members, which is over 30% of the ESD. I started in 2013, and at that time I remember there was about 80 of us. So that's over 35% growth. We have 25 specialists, and so those are our teachers, our early intervention, early childhood special education teachers. 39 educational assistants, and I'll note that some of these people have dual roles, right? And 14 support staff. We have 4 occupational therapists, 6 physical therapists, 19 speech and language pathologists, and speech and language pathology assistants, which explains when I take a pause to think of that, why I'm always recruiting, right? And why I'm competing with our district partners for really a hard to fill position. We also have a contract with a nurse, and we have hired a school psychologist to help with evaluations this year. We have one incredible mental health specialist who serves our entire Tri-County area, an autism specialist who helps assist with evaluations for early intervention students suspected of having autism. And we have a parent partner, and the 3 of us as administrators. It's an incredible team. Some of our successes. So we've been focusing a lot on social emotional needs. We know that our students have increased in challenges in these areas, especially since COVID. And so we have an evidence-based program called Sunshine Circles. And it supports children in building trust and cooperation and self-control. And we started by sending one person, our incredible mental and behavioral health specialist, to be trained in Sunshine Circles. And it brought parents in with their children, and some of that vulnerability of engaging with the program and building connections, it was so well received that we had to expand. And so with some governor's emergency education relief fund, the year funding, we used those dollars to offer more training in Sunshine Circles. And we were able to expand that to some of our external partners too. So we're trying to unsilo our services and support of our students. And so we had 2 iterations of that this last summer. And we are rolling that out in our early childhood special education classrooms and using strategies in both birth to 3 and 3 to 5 with that program, and it's very successful. But one of our challenges, Oregon Department of Education created some data collection points called adequate service levels in an attempt to try to reflect that we desperately need more funding. And early intervention target is to provide services on a weekly basis. And so again, this is data from the state perspective, where we have 66% of students in early intervention receiving weekly service And that means 34% of students in early intervention are not. We'd like to improve that. That doesn't mean that every single student in our Birth to 3 program needs that. We will taper and use our resources efficiently and effectively when they're doing well, before they're ready to test out. But as a general rule, we could do more if we had more money. I'm gonna have Julie share one of our cute little kiddos, Bailey, and a note that we had from the parent.
Here's some photos of Bailey with the equipment we've used over the last year and a half. Our daughter qualified for services with early intervention when she was 6 months old. We have had the pleasure of working with our assigned physical therapist, Bev, since then. She is now 2 years old, and with the help of Bev's regular visits and equipment that has been loaned to us, she is progressing beyond what we ever thought could be possible for her. We are so grateful for the help and support of the early intervention services we receive and have them to thank for our daughter's continued progress.
So looking at early childhood special education data, we look at the rate of growth while kids are in program from the point that they transition to kindergarten. And we also look at how much we're able to get kids to function within age expectations. And so our data is showing that we know how to support kids' developmental progress. But where we are struggling is getting them to meet age expectations. And the state doesn't expect us to have 100% of kids meeting age expectations by the time they transition to kindergarten, but we're even struggling with the goal of 60% because we need more. And so this next slide will show adequate service levels from ODE are categorized based on level of need. So if a child qualifies and shows a delay in only one area, the adequate service level would be considered a low need, and 78% of our kiddos are receiving adequate services, which again means 22% of kids with a delay in one domain are not receiving adequate services. When you look at moderate needs, that's 3 to 4 areas of delay, and we're almost split. 54% of kids with moderate needs are receiving an adequate level of service. And that's a goal of about 12 hours of preschool a week. The most that we offer for our students is 7.5. And we really don't have the funds to expand that. And we want to support kids' ability to participate in inclusive environments. So if we can go to them and provide services in a general education preschool, we are doing that as much as we can. High needs is pretty depressing, honestly, when I look at that. And this is looking again at the governor's report, and only 20% of kids. High level needs are if you are delayed in most or all developmental domains, and only 20% of kids are receiving adequate service levels, and 80% are not.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can you give me, I may be the only one that needs it, some indication of what, when you say developmental domains?
Oh, yes,
What
yes, thank you for asking. So communication, so expressive communication or understanding of communication, motor skill development, social emotional learning, all of
Great.
those types.
Yes, that's helpful.
Yeah, so oftentimes we'll have, let's say a child is qualifying because they have a speech delay, that would be considered a low level need, and adequate service for that is ECSE, services at least on a weekly basis. Versus when you get into the moderate or high level needs, we're looking at 12 to 15 hours a week of preschool. And then how often are we able to provide family teaching opportunities, and how are our services embedded into those hours of preschool?
Jenny, how many kids are in the high needs? What was the percentage? I can't.
We have 80% of kids are not receiving adequate service levels, which is preschool about 15 hours a week.
Just a clarifying question too, or when we're saying we, the numbers, is this High Desert ESD numbers or is this state numbers?
This is the state numbers.
This is state numbers.
But I would say we probably are
Trend the same.
trending the same, if not a little worse,
Okay.
honestly. And some of our challenges in Central Oregon are not enough inclusive preschool settings. And so not only do we not have maybe enough preschool slots, but then when we are serving them in our self-contained special education preschool, our capacity is 2 to 3 days a week and our classes are 2.5 hours a class. And they've been that way. I was talking to somebody who's been here just about as long as me. We haven't increased our service times in the last decade. We have had budget challenges where our contract days have gone down into like the 170s. And so we've managed really tight financial periods of time by reducing the number of days, but not changing the number of hours of services. And we are at a full 189-day contract. So, another challenge when you talk about funding and need is recruitment and retention of qualified workforce. And so this is the first year that I know since I've been here in 2013 that we haven't filled all of our positions. And I am desperately seeking speech language pathologists and have worked so closely with human resources and Dr. Johnson to develop a stipend, to provide placement on a salary schedule based on the number of credits past that bachelor's degree. So you guys are aware of those, and it did help, but I still don't have those positions filled. And so what we're doing is trying to develop a teleservice delivery model, which is not ideal. And also we learned some things from COVID and doing services virtually. And so I believe that we can do it in a way that will benefit our students, but it's not a preference for us to be switching in preschool special education to delivering speech services virtually, but we have to serve these kids and we're gonna create an innovative way to meet that challenge.
Do you have any insight on what you think may be a contributing factor beyond maybe salary?
I think the sheer number of students in special education who need speech services, there is not enough capacity in the system. We don't have any programs here. Like I would love OSU Cascades to develop a speech program. And so we're pulling from out of Central Oregon, or people are attending those programs virtually and we're then competing with, limited resources and competing. Everybody needs speech language pathologists. What I worry is that we're on the precipice of having this challenge with occupational therapists. Been talking for years, and nationally OTs have pushed back to not switch to entry-level doctorate programs. Most in anticipation of that change are switching their programs to doctoral level, and you're looking at over $100,000, if not over $200,000 in higher education costs, and you can get paid more in the private sector if you are a school-based health professional. It doesn't pay as much. So these are the facilities that High Desert ESD owns, and we are so thrilled with our Manzanita renovation, and the ability to have our programs under one roof is really incredible in Redmond. And we are very grateful for Alice Hatch. And then Larson Learning Center, that we share with Brick County School District, but we were able to have some modulars placed there, and so we have good program togetherness in these locations. It brings stability for our teachers and our families, where we're not worried about where we're gonna find a classroom the next year. And having teachers every summer pack up classrooms and move is really hard. And so the dream is to have really equitable access to permanent facilities in each location. And so I would love to have money and a location to build an early childhood center up in Madras. And we are very grateful to be housed in Jefferson Middle School. It's challenging though, even just having a place to meet with staff in private. We are struggling, we don't have that, we have to seek that out, and some days we can't find that. So it's working, and the dream is that we find funding to develop a secure permanent facility for our children up there. Okay.
Okay. Well, I thought I would share just another story. I had a teacher reach out to our families and we let our families know we were meeting with the board. It's like, anything you'd want to share. And this this little note in the middle was from a mom that is a very quiet mom, and so it was very surprising to get this note from her. It was a pretty good note, but this little one we've had in our program since he was 6 months old, so I thought I would just read it to you. It says, "My name is Linda Sanchez, mother of Leon, who is now enrolled at Alice Hatch. Leon has been attending Alice Hatch since he was 6 months old. He was born with health problems and special needs. Alice Hatch has been the perfect place for him since he came home from the NICU in Portland. He has learned so much, from sitting down to running, from not saying a word to almost speaking, from being shy to being a very outgoing kid who loves to play with other kids. Leon loves going to Alice Hatch and loves his teacher. As a parent, I am very pleased with the services he receives there. The teachers do their best to help not just Leon, but all the kids attending Alice Hatch. All the different services they have are very important because they all fit every kid in a different way. Alice Hatch offers different services, and the services Leon has received has made him a strong kid. Leon is now a 4-year-old kid who knows colors, shapes, animals, and is learning to draw and write. He knows who he is and identifies friends and family members. Leon is now a very active little boy who loves music and goes to the park. He has become independent yet a loving boy who is learning to live a normal life. Thanks to Alice Hatch and their services, Leon has learned to crawl and will walk for a better life ahead of him." And I think little Leon is headed to kindergarten this year. This other little one on the bottom right, her little daughter is named Charlotte, and I'm not going to read that to you, but Charlotte was with us for 3 years and started in one of our more intensive classrooms that had a lot of direct instruction teaching, and Charlotte had a hard time leaving Mom, and Mom had a hard time leaving Charlotte. And so right at the beginning of the year, it took, Charlotte was crying and Mom was crying, and it was a lot. And by 3 years, took a long time, but by her 3rd year there, she had changed into a different level of the class, and she would hold hands with her little friends. Mom was like, perfect, she's on her own, she's doing well, and was happy to have her go to class. And she went to kinder, and she was in a typical gen ed kinder class. So super, it was like the perfect story for a little lady, just going from the intensive instruction that she needed when she arrived all the way through the program and then going into a gen ed kindergarten class. It was perfect, it was beautiful. And then this other one up there, I don't know if you can read it all, but that's a family that Jenny was just talking about with our Sunshine Circles. They participated in the Sunshine Circle. And the thing that this note, it says, basically saying Sunshine Circle gave us the tools, guidance, and confidence to support our child's development and help them thrive. We will always deeply appreciate the difference these programs and the support, care, and education from our teachers, therapists, and the rest of the team. have made in our lives. And I think the one thing about the Sunshine Circles is that it's a parent-child group, and so it's teaching parents how to interact with their children, but it's also creating community for those families at a young age. So it's really targeted for, well, 2 to 5, but it's a community where parents are coming, so there's that benefit as well during the time that can be kind of hard. Those are our families and our kids.
I asked the team for some stories too, and I had to share that they had this one little person who they were seeing in the home, and the teacher couldn't figure out how to get him to do anything. And so she brought in the speech language pathologist, and they worked, and he started to use sign language, but he would sign behind his back. And now they're saying that he is speaking in 10 to 12 word sentences, and the speech pathologist is working on articulation or speech sound development, but from a kiddo who was so shy. And so working on building those relationships with our children, right? The physical therapist shared that he has a little guy when he goes into the home who sits with his arms crossed. And so one day he was talking to the mom and turned, and this little guy stood up, took a couple steps, and Chris turned and sat back. And so these stories just like fill your heart with joy, right? And we have another one whose grandma was so afraid for her to start preschool because she didn't think that she would make any friends. And she made a connection right away with another little girl in the class and walked through the front doors of the school, saw the other little girl and said friend, and ran over and gave this other little girl a hug. And then just so that you guys know, we also try to support inclusion by paying for some tuition scholarships. So we have one in Bend where we pay for a tuition slot to give kids access who might not otherwise be able to afford participating in a general education preschool environment, and we just added another partner in Prineville. And so I just had a thank you email from a family saying what a difference it made because she wouldn't have been able to access without that scholarship. So thank you for allowing us to share. We have many, many stories, and we could probably talk your ear off for hours about the work that we do because we're all passionate.
One clarification or I guess I just need a little information. You said there's a 27% increase over time, you said from 2014, I think, to now. Is that because you're doing a better job identifying those kids, or is it because just there's more kids?
I think there's more kids.
Okay.
Yeah. I honestly think that we need to continue to actively try to be in areas where families are to always seek referrals, but our programs have grown probably aligned with population growth.
Okay, thank you.
I noticed that one year, I think it was 22, it went up 100, I think, in 4, and then the following year, if I'm not mistaken, it dropped quite a bit. Is that population as well, or was it very different?
That's why I did the 10-year because there's this ebb and flow, right? And then to look at the overall program growth over time, I don't know if that's a post-COVID. We kept doing evaluations during COVID, but I don't know that people accessed them at the same level. And so as a state, our programs are rebounding in 4 to 5 special ed from COVID times. And then we had a huge transition to kindergarten class last year too. So I don't know if that big increase and then those kids went on to kindergarten and now we're kind of stabilized. Which is hard to plan when your funding is based on the previous year and they grab, data from December 1st and they look at 2 Decembers in a row and then give you funding and you're kind of stuck with it. And then, we try to do more and more and kids have increasing behaviors and social emotional challenges. And so when I take a look back at, yeah, we've grown 27%. We've also grown a lot in staffing. It doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it because the number of kids with autism has grown tremendously. I think that is in part we're doing a better job at identifying, especially girls, what girls with autism present. And so those numbers are really increasing and those kiddos take more services. And so I think everybody feels like doing the best that they can, but the ask, the lobbying and the ask is that we need a huge increase to keep doing what we're doing. And I don't wanna cut any services. We wanna do more.
As board members of High Desert ESD, one of the things that you can actually do this year is advocate to your legislators for increased funding for early childhood. You won't be alone in that. That's something that ESDs are really rallying around in this legislative session. It is vastly underfunded across the state, and it's something that ESDs are asking the legislators to prioritize in the session. So Alex gave you an incredible resource about a couple board meetings back. So you could even work together to send those letters if you're interested in doing that. We would be thrilled, and it would be great to have a unified voice in High Desert.
I did go to the Oregon Association of ESDs meeting last week, and the ask is $432.8 million to adequately fund UCSD. And that's a dream, right? That would be a huge increase.
That would be
That's-
to reach the levels that you were saying would be adequate.
And would our advocacy be stronger as individual board members writing or as a collective? Great question.
You know, I have an opinion, but I don't have a research-based answer. Would you go, do you know, Mary?
Why don't we reach out to Lori Sansfield, who lobbies now for the OAESD, and see what her thoughts on that are.
There is a possibility that you can do both.
Yeah, she'll probably say that, but
So
the specialist,
we, of
not me.
course, as an organization, would love to support something like that. And make a difference.
When the children go on to kindergarten, do you do any tracking to see how they're doing, or is it mostly just anecdotal?
Mostly just anecdotal. Although I would like to do like a, let's take a data grab at third grade. We've talked about that, but we haven't actually done that.
You're a little busy, so you get it.
If I could get $432.8 million, our share's about between 5% and 6%, then I could probably do that.
And Jenny, one of the things that struck me was you mentioned you would love to see like OSU Cascades have like an occupational therapy or speech probably program and have these programs. I mean, those conversations happening?
Yeah, so we take their doctoral and physical therapy students.
Okay.
That program is in its second year. And the long-term plan is to have an allied health science program at OSU Cascades and add OT probably and then speech.
Okay.
That's, dependent on many factors,
Yeah.
I'm sure, and it's a lot to have them even develop the doctoral physical therapy program, but we have a working relationship where we take their students every fall.
And in answer to your question, Alex, that you had earlier, the number of students graduating from those specialist programs simply doesn't meet the demand that school districts have, let alone the private or even the medical nonprofit. It's just not enough coming out, so.
So as the old timer, I think maybe Kristen, Shelley and I are the only ones that remember this, but a number of years ago, prior, I guess, ESD board members, Matt, you actually remember this a little bit, Bob Moore and Scott Reynolds created that one pager during the legislative session, and they took a day to Salem, and they stood in the hallway and essentially like talked to X number of legislators, you made a quiz.
I do remember that.
And affected the additional funding, and HDESD and Bob especially by name as one of our board members, like for years after, was credited with that, like taking a day to go to Salem, to stand in the hallways, to essentially have a few folks on Alex's list who they, scheduled time with, and just really pressed in the hallway when all the legislators just had hired individuals, and that was where we had another gap like we have now to Jimmy's dreams and Jenny's dreams and Julie's dreams.
I still have the white paper that he took with him, so
Can we see it?
yeah, oh, of course,
Thanks.
I made many copies of that. So yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Rachel.
I think if anything, I'll just advocate again as another, I agree, funding, right? As like someone who, my son did go to early intervention, and part of the reason that we didn't continue forward with ECSC was because the hours of availability, right? And the private sector allowed us more flexibility in our schedule to provide him the services that he needs. And this is kind of like the circle we're running now, and that is something I hear often. People love everything that you guys provide. They want more of it. So I think that's my role to help support that, and I'll go stand in some halls if you need it. But yeah, and again, I just want to emphasize the staff photo you guys have put there. Every single person we interacted with was wonderful. I will shout over and over Janet, the speech pathologist. Some of my son's favorite toys are still the stuff she brought to her house for me to play with. So they're great people, and yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that again. Like in that community, people love what you guys provide. They just want more. So how we can help support that? I'll give it a shot.
Janet was also the speech therapist for our grandson who was not speaking when he was 2. And it was mid-COVID when he received his evaluation, and that was a challenge, and getting a 2-year-old to sit still long enough for therapy was a challenge for my daughter. He was in his high chair, and now you would never know. He just keeps up with the best of them and then some. So it was amazing how well they worked with him and with her, with our daughter.
Thank you guys for your presentation.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have our finance report. Angela.
All right, let's start off with a joke. Now. Okay. What type of sheets do accountants use to make their beds? Balance sheets. Oh, it could be that too. Spreadsheet,
That's what I thought.
That's what I was thinking.
Regina, you have your spot, I don't know.
I couldn't see it.
Oh, it's just between Rachel and Jamie.
They have a
We have our laptops.
Over.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So we have the same format that we had last month. So we start off with the letter. So just a couple highlights to the dollar overview for the general fund LSP. We have the special revenue added. And then I did want to point out that we did actually receive the amendments for EIECSC and K-12 special programs for this year from ODE. So, amen. So we will be billing out the first 2 quarters of this year for both of those for reimbursement, and those should go out next week. And then we are in the thick of budgeting, so staffing rosters went out on Friday. Those are due back on the 31st. And then I'll create all the Google budget spreadsheets, and then we'll have the meetings the last 2 weeks of February with all the programs for budgeting. And there's a finance committee meeting next week on the 30th, and that's where we'll go over all the budget assumptions. And so that's the budget update for that. We did receive our payment
from the Coats Trust last month in the amount of $95,959, so that is the final update for that. We did add a couple of new slides into your financial data, and Leah is going to go over those with you.
I had they're also on page 3, and there are the bar graphs. So we haven't gotten any asks or questions or comments on the financials since the last meeting, but I know that not everybody was here last time, so again, we welcome your input, we welcome any comments if this is valuable to you, if you wanna see anything different. The first two statements are the same. The first one is just estimated actuals or forecasted actuals to the end of the year for all of our funds. In the upper right-hand corner, it says page 1, if you're following along. The second one, page 2, is our general fund operations, so that's just a small amount that represents the tiny amount of our general fund budget that is allocated to the administration here, so Sarah, Angela, myself, and some of our teams here. General fund operations. What we did add this time on page 3, I thought you might find value. Some people really like pictures, so I've got some bar charts in there. This is our, again, just the general fund operations, not any of the other funds, but it's by month and year over year. You will notice, for example, in the revenues, under the month of December, a significant deviation, I would say. 1 year to the next. December is just this month behind us. Not everything has been recorded yet. I will keep these updated as we finish off December, so by the time we get to January, you'll see some adjustments there. But this does show you how our trends stay pretty consistent year over year. Our funding, a lot of our funding comes in these quarter swings. People spreading out their property taxes, you know. Same way with our expenses. You can see the expenses are trending right in alignment there as well, year over year. Page 4 is the local service plan. That was the same as last year. Again, we've got our adopted budget. Our revised budget represents the adopted plus any adjustments for the supplementals. The supplemental you guys approved during the last board meeting. And then actuals in year over year. These are forecasted actuals to the end of the year. So again, as we know more or record more, new things come up, we'll adjust those accordingly. And then page 5, I added in our special revenue funds here. These are all our huge grants, our HDESD, all of our large grants. Again, I thought you might find it valuable just to see what that funding looks like. Obviously, as the legislature gives and takes funding, these are just nice to see what they do year over year. And I think that's it. I included the FAQs again, or I should say glossary of terms. I'll include these for a couple of months, and then after a while, you'll probably get tired of us burning paper for those, so I'll drop them off, but if you ever would like them back again, we can always put them back. Thank you, they are very helpful. There you go.
I like your new formats quite a bit.
It really is trying to tie, if you were to lay your final financials at the end of the year side by side with what you're seeing month over month, that organization and structure of it, I think helps.
I'm still deferring and always waiting for Anthony to chat.
Indeed.
Maybe next month, they'll get it.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to our discussion items, we have the FCC EBS license.
Yes.
Rachel, I have no idea what this is. Will you enlighten us?
Hopefully this is an easy, high-level update so that we have got the board awareness of this little slice of 5G spectrum that we have, and that there is an offer to purchase it. It is a license that we obtained it's
been 15 years essentially. We had 2 renewals with the FCC and then 5-year rates. It was a partnership with Ben Lapine, Central Oregon Community College, High Desert ESD, and then what ended up being Clearwire. Anybody remember Clearwire in Central Oregon? That sold out to Sprint, and it's been an absentee landlord. We talk about it as a donut, this kind of circle of this sphere that we divided into 4. And there is a quarter of the donut missing because Clearwire has never, and Sprint has never done anything with that segment. The 3 education entities banded together to and hired, each put a little bit of money in the pot to hire a firm out of Seattle in about 15 to 20 years ago to do the due diligence on if this made sense. This was a section of the spectrum that the FCC was dedicating for educational facilities, and that could be essentially leased or purchased for nothing but a long-term lease commitment, right? That we wouldn't sell it to a private party, things like that. And that we needed to have actual use. And I'm proud to sit here as the CIO here saying that for a number of years we were the only one. And in fact, I was in DC before the pandemic because the Ajit Pai, who was the chairman, was really cranky about the CES spectrum because nobody's using it. Like we've got, like it could be used by the commercial providers, and we were one of 5 organizations that actually had it lit up. And we used to provide line of sight services for EIDCSE in that means Media Building and in Redmond facilities and also in Bend facilities, and then some other backhaul things. And it wasn't a substantial portion of our wireless network, but it did give us line of sight access to those facilities. We did actually use the service. I was able to tell our story, right, that table with the FCC commissioners. And they did, however, move forward because there were only 5 of us with essentially converting that spectrum into something that could be purchased for private entities or nonprofit entities, whatever it is, that you did not have to go through a long, arduous process as an educational entity to buy and maintain that lease. So we have had a local Bend partner, known as Phonics, as an internet service provider. They have been our partner in using that spectrum. They are the ones that had our equipment in Iraq and that helped us provide that line of sight access to our facilities. They would like to purchase it from us, and COCC and Federal Times as well. And they've made an offer that is selling something that is not of high value to us on our own because we don't have the investment for the technology to make it meaningful across the region. It is a band that requires a different type of technology than what we do to put Wi-Fi in our buildings. We are in close conversation with Bend and COCC as they navigate. In fact, we're a little bit on the lead on this and are in close conversation with them. Lauren, Lester, and Heidi Kim and our legal services team have been great partners in this. So unless someone has heartburn over it, I think this conversation is about permission to, or kind of some assent to continue negotiating, and then we'll come forward with a formal proposal by Dr. Johnson at a future date.
Do you know the acronym FCC?
Oh, it's the Federal Communications
Commission.
Thank you, Commission. I started to say corporation sometimes. So that is, the FCC is the one that regulates the television and the airspace waves, essentially, some telephone common carrier types of things. It is the organization that is federal government and federal government adjacent, is how we like to refer to it.
What we own is a license.
Correct. We have, and we don't own it, we lease it. We sit on the lease side. And if we continue to renew it, right, like we can hold on to it as long as we would like, but now these are available for non-educational organizations, and we do not have to Jenny's point, we try to push as much money towards kids as possible, and so we don't want to get in the business of running an internet service provider corporation.
And it's a lease on a signal, the spectrum, like a
A
piece,
very
a
narrow,
piece of
a
the
very,
spectrum.
yes.
Trying to figure out, is that real property?
I know, right?
Yeah. originally Angela, I'm like, Angela, here's what's going on, like, what process do we follow on this? Yes,
We can
so-
sell it if it's a lease.
What it would be is the purchase is for us to assign the lease. The offer, right, for purchase would be for us to assign our lease rights to it.
Got it, okay.
Or the
Subletting,
whoever
yeah.
would take that.
We're subletting the airway.
Exactly.
Because we can't own the airway.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we would assign the lease.
Yeah. And just for context, COCC, I just heard about this today at COCC, so we are considering the same. Yeah.
Laura's-
Yes, Laura said she'd love to hear back from you, so.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
she said you've been in contact.
I don't feel that there's any objections at this point, so I would say continue. Yes. Very interesting.
Yes, it is. It's-
The things that you learn.
It was a
when you're at all the-
surprise email, so, and a good partner of ours for some years who has built a business, a local business on us, so there's, you know, interesting places.
Absolutely. Okay. Perfect. Moving on to our next item, resolution 9925, Carlos.
Yeah, thank you, and it gives me a lot of pleasure to be able to present this for discussion, and it's in your packets, and you probably then, an opportunity to read it as well. But again, it's providing us with an opportunity as board members to reaffirm our commitment to kids. Our commitment to kids to be able to come to school, to get an education, regardless of their immigration status and who they are. And I'm hoping that as a board, that is something that we all firmly believe and will be willing to acknowledge that when we go into action items, because it is an action item as well. And this affirmation, this resolution is embedded in our equity plan, our HDESD equity plan. It's based on state statute. And again, more importantly, I think it's something that as educators or people that are responsible for the education of kids, it deals with the safety of children more than anything else and their well-being. Having witnessed some of the anxiety and fear that comes about when there's concerns about whether they're going to be removed from school or their parents won't be home when they get home from school, is a tremendous disruptor, tremendous disruptor to their education. And if we can, as a board, convey to our families and to our staff that we stand resolute in the fact that we are going to do what we can to make sure that kids can get a free and equal education. I think that's the important thing that we need to do. They are protected on the basis of national origin and according to state statute. So unless I open it up for questions, I guess at this point.
Was this reviewed by our legal counsel?
Yes.
Or, yeah.
How could we do anything less? Right.
I got some good questions. I noticed that it is marked as a resolution, but we don't do see it. But where this document is going to live and like, I guess, hold power, is like where and, yeah, it's where.
I can answer a little bit of that. If you look to the very last statement in the resolution, what this does is direct your employee, the superintendent, to create a protocol for carrying it out. And so if you look at the next page, you'll see this is almost like AR, the administrative rules that you are giving to the district to carry out. So, these also have been reviewed by our legal team as well as, it's actually happening in partner districts all around the state. And then, this colorful page really is a reflection of our equity policy. And so there's actions, basically the equity policy directs your organization how to carry out this resolution. It's almost like at first it's kind of in thought, theory through policy, and then when an opportunity comes up, you put together a resolution and you say, here's an example of a time when we are directing you specifically around this topic.
Is the protocol an existing AR protocol, or is this new?
This is new.
But what we're doing today is we're voting on the resolution. The protocol is not something that we vote on, that's something that's staff driven and staff initiated, so.
It's for your clarification in what it would look like when we put the action behind the resolution.
So the board has voted on this resolution previously, so it says we're reaffirming.
In the sense, you're reaffirming the commitment. This is a new resolution.
A new resolution.
It's a new resolution, I think it's citing board policy. I think that's where the reaffirmation
Yeah,
comes
that's
from.
fine.
It's reaffirming existing policy. Yeah, I think, like you said, in this time, exactly what Carlos is saying, having everybody on the same page with that understanding, right? That this gives that clear directive, not only from the board level, it shows board support, but it also gives you the, tangible, hey, now every staff member can know and follow along exactly with the way they're being directed, and echo that. So I love the fact that you provided the protocol as an example too, just to give that understanding that yes, it's literally not gonna live just up here, it's going to be enacted.
And when we get to the superintendent report, our executive director of equity is going to talk to you even in more detail about how we're carrying out the resolution. So there'll be additional. This is kind of the board's part, and then we have the staff part.
Carlos, any other questions or discussion around the resolution? Okay, like I said, as noted, you'll see it as an action item, so it'll be on the agenda later. Moving along, we have our superintendent report with Dr. Johnson.
So the board highlighted the urgency around the current situation, and so we have been actively working on some things, and our executive director of equity, Ratila, has been very busy, and so she's gonna just take a minute to talk to you about Project Dignity and Beyond.
Hi, everyone. I think Sarah has done a good job of keeping you updated through your weekly notes, and so I don't wanna add any more than I need to. I think the biggest thing to add is that we did just have a work group meeting where we invited Vincent to come and present. He was here in person on Monday for our alt, and that was pretty powerful to pivot on an emergency basis, taking Angela's budget time to really, again, layer the importance of this conversation. And so by doing that, then the next step was engaging in a conversation with Better Together, who is our CBO that has built those relationships with community partners cross-sector, and leveraging that to what does the community say, and what do those community partners say, And that meeting was Thursday. So we had the alt on Monday, where the staff heard from Vincent directly himself here in person of the project dignity and belonging and the why. And then the layering of then having him present again to LSI. And that was pretty powerful because I think that was our largest. I'm gonna look at Gabriela that was there, Diane was there, there were several other, there were a lot of staff from the ESD present as well, but it was probably our largest work group that we've had in a very long time. We had 20 partners virtually at one point. Sarah, you connected online and had your first LSI experience. And then we had a room full at the Better Together office, probably another 20 maybe. Everyone from what I have said from the start to Sarah is, in order for us to do this effectively, we should not be doing this alone. And the first partner that I thought of that we should be engaging is our Latino Community Association. That is the only Latino serving institution in our region in terms of first impact to this priority of families. And so I just want to echo, and I'm going to read it just to help make sense of why us and the positionality. I think it's pretty powerful that by passing a resolution, you are giving permission to the leader of the High Desert ESD to take this a step further and put actions to the equity statement that she already said, right? Like that, the sense making is if we're gonna be that bold in passing a policy and then we're gonna create this beautiful statement, where does it become an action item for us? And it becomes in times of emergencies like what we are facing now, it is really real. Just before coming here, I was in another meeting with ODE where we just learned of the new administration's passing of removing any protective barriers that were put in place to kind of protect school systems. That literally was just announced. And so I'm gonna read this and the purpose and intention, you know, what we've been, was one thing when we engaged with Vincent, and we have pivoted to really listening to everyone around the table, from the alt group to this community group where we were at, and customizing the survey. I debrief with him tomorrow morning, where we have the conversation of what does rollout of this mean. I have a meeting with the new leader for LCA, and then also plan for later this week, where they will also engage with Sarah in this conversation of what does it mean when an ESD takes a bold stance this way. And so I'm gonna read this and hopefully it makes sense, and then if anybody has any questions, and that's really where we're at. By leveraging its regional role, High Desert ESD can amplify the impact of Project Dignity and Belonging. It can ensure that component districts have the resources, training, and support necessary to foster equitable, compassionate, and inclusive educational environments. This coordinated approach will help all districts under the ESD umbrella provide a safe haven for undocumented students and their families, ensuring that dignity, belonging, and advocacy remain at the forefront of educational practice. We hear from districts all the time is, what is the ESD going to do? So it does matter when our legal team puts something together like the protocol for ICE, right? And so what we've done is share that within rural and then our larger districts. Everybody seems to be doing the same. It doesn't really, in terms of like, going back to your question, Elizabeth, it's pretty bold to just have a statement, but then to enact and then invite somebody to come in from the outside and say, help us figure out what our role could be. That's kind of where I see this having Vincent. I don't know him, but I already care deeply for the work that he does. Just in a few engagement, he's very emotionally attached to this body of work in terms of what it means for him personally, and then the work that he does in service to his community in Washington. And so I have no doubt that we are digging into something we've never have done before, and I'm grateful for the boldness of what that means. to support the districts that maybe need that layering of, well, if the ESD is giving us guidance, we have something where a lot of times districts have nothing. So that's where we're at. Vincent is great. I will know more tomorrow. I think we're almost at the finish line of the survey. The LSI work group added so much more, and then we debriefed again to finish cleaning that up, and it made sense. There was a lot of sense making that needed to happen and not, so I feel really good about where we're at. And the goal will be to send that out to community partners so that they've said from us, here's what we need in terms of a training. You know, we're really good at creating protocols. ODE is really good at creating toolkits without guidance and instruction to how to roll them out. We are hoping to learn from some of those mistakes and say, we can do better around this. And this is, the level of urgency for me is pretty real. That's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
Could you remind me, LSI and ALT, what do those stand for?
ALT is our all leadership team of the ESD.
Okay.
There's about 50 of us in total, and we meet once a month for 2 hours. And the exec team works really hard at creating what is the one thing we want to say in that 2-hour time that we have, and so we use that for that. LSI is a Latino Success Initiative. It is a work group that lived under the ESD before Better Together, and then it used to be all superintendents. It is now evolved to be the group that really cultivates, plants seeds, makes them come to fruition through a lot of thinking around our Latino community. Yeah.
All right, any questions on that part before I move to the next part? I want to report to you that after a lot of listening and meetings, I thought it would be fun tonight to just give you a list of what we are known and most appreciated for in our region by our school districts. Substitute services, which provide reliable staffing to minimize disruptions to classrooms. It's an important service. Technology services, ensuring safe, secure, and accessibility to technology for districts. Legal services, supporting districts with guidance that saves time and resources. Collaboration, facilitation, and coordination. So not only do the superintendents connect, but each department connects with the regional leaders, and that's something that our districts appreciate and rely upon. Special services support. Our team, all the way from K through 12 and even beyond in transitions, equipping districts to meet diverse student needs, partnering with districts to meet the needs of all students requiring special program support. Career technical education leadership is something that surfaces as something we're really good at, leading and supporting career technical education programs in the region. And EIECSE, providing early intervention, early childhood special education on a limited budget. We're pretty amazing at doing that. And then something that has surfaced is that student behavior support. We offer programs to develop student behavior in on-site placements, and primarily most of those are used by the Benton Pines School District, but we do have some slots that others can access it on a limited basis. We could actually, as an ESD, provide more of that if we had the resources. So just letting you know, this keeps following that LSP work and process, and the next steps is basically the board and our staff moves into a revision and renewal of the strategic planning of High Desert ESD. One of the things right now is our strategic plan really lives in a very loose format in the front 2 pages of LSD. So I'm hoping throughout this next 18 months to collaborate to revisit and renew the strategic plan and establish systems for accountability and continuous improvement. I think one thing that has been very interesting to me is to look back at the data
And Shelley, she's incredible at keeping that data accessible. So we began giving a survey in 2021, and 270 something have been sent out each year. And in 2021, we got 80 responses, giving information in our programs. In 2022, we got 82 responses. In 2023, we got 81 responses. And then last year, it took a complete dive, and out of the 276 sent out and left out there for a good 3 weeks with some
With reminders, yeah.
we got 15 back. So that's a message to ESD that we need to revisit our continuous feedback loop. And that's something that we'll work with you to plan, work with the staff to plan as we move into this next phase. It's an exciting phase to do because you get to really refine your vision and your mission. You get to align your goals and your priorities. And then of course, as you move into budgeting, you get to align your resources. And then we have to ensure sustainability and adaptability. If we had no adaptability, we would not be able to really pivot and I want to say respond to things that like the need to provide a whole other layer of belonging and dignity for a set of students. So we want to be sure that we have the capacity to do that. And then after we get in that sustainability and adaptability, just keeping our direction clear and also communicating that out with a powerful vision and powerful message, strategic vision and message throughout the region. So that's kind of where I've been and we've been and where we're headed in the next phase. And it's certainly an exciting phase.
Sarah, what was when we went over the list of services that are, what was the first one you said?
Substitute services?
Substitute. Okay.
It might seem trivial in a way, but that falls under our administrative services, and it's huge for our districts. When you say, what do we do that you value the most, that often comes up at the very top because that takes a lot of the weight off of the districts in not only recruiting, but we now have a fabulous training system, and Debbie continues to work on the feedback that we get from districts. Where do you need to strengthen it? Where do you need to develop? And so we feel good about that, and we certainly want to keep that.
I have a question, before you mentioned the list that were appreciated because of those reasons and so many more. How did we collect that data?
So that data is comes through that collaborative LSP process where you're talking individually to each superintendent, and then they collaboratively come together and say, what do we want to prioritize and what do we value? And then also each one of our executive directors has a connection to people in the district, so they're gathering information about that as well. So the SSA team, technology team knows what districts are requesting or they're meeting specifically. I just met with our interim executive director of special programs who came back and emphasized the importance after talking to a regional team, not only individually but as a group, just emphasizing how important the specialists are and then the behavioral support. So, yes, and you know, it's also in reference back to these surveys, but data from last year was lower, so. So the next, there's one more thing. There is an election in front of you for a position that will come in the action item is the ballot for election for the OAESD chair-elect, Dr. Jeffrey Cracker. Elizabeth, thank you for that question.
From the OAESD chair elect, does that board, is this a nomination from that board? Do you know?
Yes,
Is that,
and you're being asked to vote on it, and then tomorrow I will put our vote into their system.
just wanted to know, right?
Yeah, that was the only one that came.
Elizabeth, can I jump back to, because I think another piece of data is looking at your budget and what the region spends their money on. So that is partly what these are the things that they are willing to spend money on as a service through ESD. So it's not only their voice, but then you have that quantitative data as well.
I wonder if we can come up on consistent data every year since it
That has to be one of the goals. The survey has been used pretty effectively for 3 years, but we don't have a consistent, what we're calling a consistent consumer feedback loop is something that will be developed in the next stage of the strategic.
Yeah.
Each goal you set, you have to have a way, you ideally have a way to measure that.
Right.
And we're a little bit loose on that right now. In the front of the LSP, there's a couple pages that talk about our vision, our mission, our core values, and our goals. And so something like improve the educational, physical, and mental well-being of students in our region is one of our goals. And there's not a set of data that we're using to say, where did we start and where are we going with that goal? Another one is recruit and support and retain an outstanding, engaged, professional, and diverse workplace. So we have to determine a way to really put some numbers around that. And then be the most effective and sought after P through 20 facilitator of educational services in Central Oregon by bridging gaps and bringing people together and providing excellent services that are innovative and restorative in those we serve. So it was really hard to measure, so part of what we'll try to do in this next round is kind of say, what are those indicators and how will we know if we're moving?
On the OAESD chair elect position, it does seem a little odd. Is this something we do every year? I feel like that's something that their board would elect and then just vote on.
Well,
Come to.
I can
That's fine.
I can pull up the email that came with it.
No, I'm sure this is the process.
Yes, it is.
Is it necessary? That would be my question.
I think they solicit,
Well,
they
yes.
solicit nominees
Right,
from the various ESDs and more specifically from the governance council representatives. And typically there aren't a lot of people that are raising their hand. So I admire Mr. Crapper or Dr.
Yeah.
Crapper for willing to step up.
yeah, I think sometimes we've had two, but we've
Yeah.
not had very many.
Matt, do you mind if I circle back? I had one thing that I forgot. I'm
I
sorry.
have not moved on from the
Okay,
superintendent's
right on.
report, so
Still
you're
superintendent
still
report.
there.
I believed, hopefully I'm correct, that you would be interested in what the statewide initiatives are coming up. Because ESDs are by statute obligated to help implement the initiatives of the state. So early literacy professional development is one of those. And that's where you're hearing about the literacy of early childhood and the governor's goals around that. Career and technical ed, we're in that, so we have the opportunity to hopefully move that forward. Medicaid billing, we've had a couple of our districts ask about that. We do that in EIDCSE, we do not do it in K-12, but that might be an opportunity for us to support. Integrated guidance, that is Shay Michelson's department, and I think we're very strong in providing that integrated guidance. school safety and prevention specialists. We have a safety department and it's not consistently funded by the state. Right now, we have some funding and some grant funding, but that is on the state initiative list. Regional technical assistance providers and so what they're asking for there is for ESDs to serve as a conduit between the state and the initiative implementation. And of course, they have a great acronym for it, RTAP. And then we have the ELOP, E-L-O-P, which stands for ELLs in small and rural districts. And we would have some impact in that as well because we do provide some regional schools. So I think I may have sent that in the statewide initiative report to you, but I definitely can attach that if it's something you'd like to use the hot links and look more at.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's valuable.
And it also kind of gives us the, 100,000 foot level of where the state is expecting ESDs to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for your superintendent report. Moving on, we have the board reports and board committee reports as needed. I'll start because I'm on the finance committee and I know we have a scheduled meeting for next week to go over the assumptions. Bada bing, bada boom. Other committee reports.
Yes, Superintendent's Evaluation Committee, we've had the opportunity to meet since our last board meeting, and more importantly, we had a kind of a superintendent's evaluation training with Jen Nelson from the OSBA, and to kind of help us a little bit in kind of developing a process. And so we have developed a process, or but we're kind of fine tuning it as we go. It's going to be an expedited process considering the fact that we're starting now. We should have started, a few months ago. But between January and February, the superintendent will be determining the standards to be evaluated. We're going to be using 8 standards, nationally recognized standards. And since, again, it's expedited, we felt it would be a fairer process for Dr. Johnson to be able to work off of 2 or 3 of those standards as opposed to the whole. And since we're not using the entire year to be able to evaluate. And those standards are visionary leadership, ethics and professional norms, inclusive ESD culture, culturally responsive instructional leadership and improvement, communication and community relations, effective organizational management, effective financial management, policy, governance, and advocacy. And they've got descriptors to them, which we will be providing to board members so you know exactly what we're talking about. But again, in February, she'll be determining the standards that she will be working on. She will then kind of determine what evidence of success she's going to use to be able to demonstrate that she's moving forward on those particular standards. And in February, we will have our first board check-in. What we'll do is look at those standards, meet with Dr. Johnson. She, in turn, will be able to describe to us what she's doing in regards to those standards. And we'll be able to, at that point in time, be able to kind of make some notes and make some determinations on how well she's doing in those standards. And we'll have board check-ins periodically. March and April, again, we'll have a board check-in at probably in the April meeting. We will send out feedback surveys to component district superintendents and the leadership executive team. Again, we're going to be completing those, or having those completed and getting those back and having those tabulated. Again, because of the expedited process, we felt that it wouldn't be prudent to, at this point, to exert out to further individuals for comment. May, June, we'll have another board check-in just to kind of finalize. We'll have the from that, have the evaluation completed, and then hopefully adopted or accepted by the board. And the board will then provide some kind of a public summary on the evaluation after adoption for the general public. So again, that's kind of the timeline, and we'll provide a little more specificity as we kind of figure out the specificity. But again, we're hoping that this is going to be something that not only gives us an opportunity to rate the superintendent on how well she's doing, but also provide her with feedback that's useful and beneficial for her continued growth as the ESD superintendent. Question?
Yes.
Um,
When you say board check-ins, you mean board committee check-ins,
No,
correct?
I'm meeting,
You mean
we
everybody?
will meet at a board meeting, executive session, because we'll be discussing kind of evaluative issues and just have a conversation with Sarah on that. And that way you can, it's not just the committee.
Yeah.
And the board isn't just chiming in at the end when we have the document. So I think that'll provide her with real-time feedback.
And are we thinking this is going to be the format for the evaluation for next year as well, so that everyone's familiar with it?
Two things. Number one, we're gonna see how this rolls, you know, and because we've changed the format, I think every year. And it'd be nice to come up with something consistent, you know, so that would be nice. And so we're gonna see how it turns out. And then secondly, if it does turn out well and people are pleased, then yes, so we will start sooner and come up with a timeline that is reflective of the entire year and all of the standards. So again, we can come up with a more comprehensive evaluation. I mean, we have to keep in mind that aside from the fact that we want to be able to make some assessment of the year, we also want to be fair on the process. And according to the contract or Dr. Johnson's contract, we're required to come up or to evaluate her on a yearly basis, so.
My question is, you mentioned there's gonna be 3 that we're gonna use to evaluate, and I thought we were gonna read 3, but then I think you read 8, so.
Everything, because she still has a little time to pick out the
Okay,
3.
so so to be determined.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's kind of.
I think the OSBA gal, she said generally speaking, the process is a board would choose a coach, or the board and superintendent would choose several, but not all 8 every year. Like you do with teachers, you usually have 2 or sometimes a district will pick one of the standards and they'll just work on one standard.
We're good with her picking those and putting us in.
Sounds like the training was really valuable.
It was good,
Yeah.
good.
It was very good.
Sounds like
Yeah.
very helpful.
Really informative.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the committee. And how I wanted to share on that committee, I had no idea, but you know, as I may, we'll see how it all rolls.
Thank you. No,
And if it doesn't work, we'll blame Anne Marie.
Well, I do know that this was Peggy's project for a while, and she did try to do was really into trying to do something different, and it has gone through multiple iterations. So yeah, it sounds like this last training was very helpful.
Yeah,
and got us up good.
and I think that the format is one that we can sustain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's important. Yeah. Board outreach. Is there any updates there?
So we haven't met, we did discuss from the prior session that we're gonna talk to board members that are eligible to either renew or not renew, so that we'll have that conversation. So we'll reach
Yeah, and just a reminder, your term is ending, start considering now, if you'd like to consider getting that, because we need to get applications out. Or what?
Yeah, February was the decision.
So Elizabeth, refresh my memory, my term is ending, and my representative Ben applying, do I just reach out to
So
superintendent or?
yeah, so the ones that are sort of the representative representing a school district, we can have a conversation with the school district, or a direct relationship. Yes, we do encourage that. If you wanted to continue or not, or just opening that conversation, we do encourage that.
And when will we determine who continues or?
We're hoping that you can give us an answer in February.
Huh?
So then we can. And I think the ones that we sooner, are the ones that we actually have to post it, because we need to go through the application process. So, I mean, not trying to put more work on the school districts and say, let them know last minute. But I think we just have a longer process for like a position like mine at social services or any of the at-large positions are a little harder.
Somebody could technically run against you.
Pardon me?
Somebody technically could run against you.
That's, I know. You know, and even if the superintendent says, oh, yeah, you're in, it doesn't mean the board's gonna say I'm in, you know?
Perfect. Well, if there's nothing else, that ends the board report, and we'll move on to our action items. And the first action item we have is resolution 9925 that we talked about earlier.
I think there were board comments after board reports.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
you're right. You are right, we added that back. I skipped
Yes.
right past it.
Yeah.
We do have a section for board comments. Yes, is there anything that anybody has to share?
I have a request.
Yeah.
Last month, we, took the conversation and the action on the board superintendent, what do we call that? Agreement.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I would like to request if the rest of the board, would agree with me to bring that back in a future meeting, hopefully maybe next month, so we can have discussion and get the vote on that done so that we've got some parameters as we start into our strategic planning phase and other things.
Yeah, I also, I brought that up as well, asking why we had indefinitely tabled it, and I felt that if we had it in committee, you know, and I think the comments that were, the questions that were raised were by Elizabeth, and I thought that in the discussion phase of our agenda, we could iron out those issues, either accept them, reject them, modify them even again, or what have you, and then vote on it as an action item with those amendments or those corrections, however we wanted to phrase it. And rather than prolonging it and so forth, because I think it's important for us to have those standards, those agreements, I should say, operational. So that was my thing, and I didn't think we needed to drag it out indefinitely. I mean, I don't know how you feel, Elizabeth.
No, if I remember correctly, I think Dr. Johnson was the one that said she wanted more discussion around that.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that I think are in opposition to policy when I looked at it.
So we could continue the conversation.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
was.
all that work that you put into that, though, I would just.
I don't want
get
to
buried away.
done it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I want Elizabeth
No,
to be
yeah.
able to, you know, talk about what she brought to the table and.
No, absolutely, and I think it's appropriate that we do need to bring that back, and I can't, yeah.
Yeah, it was, last month's discussion was just, you know, it would require further discussion, requested a board schedule, dedicated work session, or just like you're saying, you know, just
I think
further discussion.
we did originally talk about a work session,
Right.
but I don't think it needs that much time.
Yeah,
So
if we could
just-
just hammer it out.
As a discussion item next time, yeah, perfect. That's all I needed to know.
And if possible, action the same night.
Okay, I will put the vote on that. Thank you.
I have a question more than a comment. Were we supposed to take action on
We will, it's next, it's on our action items. Yeah. Anything else? Alright. Hearing none, now we will move on to our action items, thank you, Shelley.
Yep.
Moving on to our first action item, resolution 9925. Again, as was presented in the discussion items, was there more to present on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I move that we adopt resolution 9925 supporting and protecting all students.
We have a motion from Carlos.
I'll second it.
We have a second from Alex. Do we have any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, that was Gwen.
That was,
Okay, thank you.
okay, resolution passes. Next action item is our OAESD chair election position on page 14. Do I have a motion to elect Jeff Crappy as OAESD chair elect?
So moved.
Who is that?
Anne Marie was
Thank
our
you.
motion and our second was Mary.
Thank
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I don't know if you noticed that he was a school teacher.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You did.
Yes.
So Emily has been unmuting during the I both times also, Shelley, just for
Okay,
your record.
thank you very
Perfect.
much.
And then our last action item is the consent agenda.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as listed.
Motion from Carlos, a second.
Second.
We have a second from Anne Marie. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously.
Is Anthony? He's not.
I think we lost Anthony. Yeah, I saw his name up there for a little bit and then he kind of disappeared.
He said he didn't have much of a voice today, so, yeah. I'm not feeling very good.
Well, thank you all again for your time and wonderful presentations tonight. We are adjourned.
Don't forget your board.
Yes.
Don't forget
make
your
sure
boards,
you
board.
Pick out your boards.
And if